1 minute till the beginning of the meeting. Well, good afternoon. The November 18th School Financing Review Commission meeting will come to order. So good afternoon and welcome to the November 18th, 2025 School Financing Review Commission. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Tom Breeze.
Before you do, one comment. Just a reminder that when you speak, please speak into the microphone. Two reasons for that. One is to make sure that we're heard in this room, and two, as I was reminded by somebody who is listening to these meetings, that if we don't speak into our microphones, the listeners can't hear us. So please use your microphone when speaking today.
Tom Breezy.
Here.
Jason Dolliver. Ann Foster.
Present.
Shavana Holman.
Present.
Shauna Koger.
Here.
Grant Latimer.
Here.
Luann Linehan.
Here.
Brian Maher.
Here.
Fred Meyer.
Here.
Aaron Plas.
Here.
Keith Runge.
Here.
John Schwartz.
Here.
Sarah Scott.
Here.
Liz Standish.
Here.
Paul Turman.
Here.
Senator Elliot Bostar. Senator Jana Hughes.
Here.
Senator Dave Merman.
Here.
14 voting members present.
That's excellent attendance again. Thanks for everybody for prioritizing this meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted as you enter the room from the main entrance doors. The minutes of the previous meeting were provided with the notice of this meeting. A copy is also provided for each commission member. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion for agenda item 3?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
It was moved by Commission Member Plas and seconded by Commission Member Holman. Is there any conversation on the motion? Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
John Schwartz.
Yes.
Brian Maher.
Yes?
Aaron Plas.
Yes.
Sarah Scott.
Yes.
Tom Breezy.
Yes.
Luann Linehan.
Yes.
Jason Dolliver. Ann Foster.
Yes.
Paul Turman.
Yes.
Grant Latimer,
Yes.
Fred Meyer,
Yes.
Liz Standish,
Yes.
Shavonna Holman,
Yes.
Keith Runge,
Yes.
Shauna Koger,
Yes.
14 yes.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to approve the minutes of the previous School Financing Review Commission meeting is adopted. Okay, I put on my notes on this next agenda item, settle in. We've got to write a report, and we've got to get it done today. So that's the mission for today. Next, we will review the draft of the annual report of this commission. This draft was prepared by members of the executive committee and shared with all commission members on November 13th. This document was drafted with the intention to provide a starting point that can be revised, added to, or reduced as needed, rather than starting from scratch. So in other words, we just put something together as a point to discuss, a point to argue from today. So we're not starting from scratch today. There are about 20 of those documents that we have in this room here available for anybody that's here in person. We also have the document on our website for anybody listening if you would like to see the document. So you can access it there. Before we start the group work, I want to ask the group, are there any questions or comments for the good of this commission that we should all think about before we dig into the group work? That's your cue, Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just emailed, hopefully all of you, I'm not very good at, the report that the the fiscal office did of the legislative office in August of 2018. And if you've got, I think copies got put on the table at page 38. I think one of the reasons I'm assuming one of the reasons we were charged with this effort to try and see if we can have some control on the increasing property taxes. If you look at the year 86, 87, which would have been pre-TIOSA, and then you look at the year 96, 97, which is 10 years later. Well, actually, I think so late. It passed in the early 90s, so it's less than 10 years later. And you look at the growth in total revenues. So actually what happened is the state added significantly more funding, but it didn't lower property taxes. As a matter of fact, property taxes kept going up, and it's the reason we're here today. So I think it's important to understand not just 20 years of history, but 40 years of history since a group like this was put together 40 years ago. It's actually, I have asked, I will ask again, because I think I asked, but maybe I did not. I would like to see if we could ask the fiscal office of the legislature to bring this report up to date, because I think it would be very helpful for our work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Linehan. Any questions on the document that the former senator sent to us? I might just ask a different question then. Are there any other topics that warrant the discussion of the full commission before we break into the group work? Okay, then we'll begin the group work. A reminder, maybe I want to go over one thing. So just so everybody in the room and in the audience knows what we're going to be doing for a while here. We're going to take the next hour, so just under an hour. We'll reconvene at 2 o'clock so that anybody listening in will know that you won't miss anything prior to 2 o'clock. But at 2 o'clock, we'll reconvene. In the meantime, those of us on the commission will be in the 3 groups to discuss the draft in your small groups, propose any edits to the full commission. And I want to consider a focus on the following sections, starting on page 5 of the draft, where it talks about preliminary findings, and really focus in on preliminary findings, summary of key findings, and next steps for the commission. I'd like each of the groups to really dig into those areas and edit, review, revise, reduce, whatever we need to do, bring that forward. Any recommendations that are determined through the small group discussions should have a consensus from the small group to come forward to the commission. In other words, one person shouldn't demand or one person shouldn't veto the recommendation of the group. After the small group review process, we'll take a break, and then we'll take time after that for each small group to report to the commission and determine if consensus exists to include revisions, additions, or deletions to the draft report. What I'll do at that point is facilitate a process to determine if consensus exists among other members so we can make those additions or deletions to the draft that we have in front of us. Okay. Following all of that, we'll take another break and rewrite today the draft so you can all get an updated version of what that draft can look like so that we can ultimately get a final copy and distribute it to members of the commission. So that's the goal for the day. I'm guessing this could take just a little bit of time. So we'll start. We will reconvene at 2 o'clock. And does anybody have any questions? Then I'll close by saying this. Just a reminder for those of you in the audience, we'll need a quiet work environment. So please move conversations into the lobby. You can certainly take the chairs with you if you'd like. And we'll make sure that nobody misses the restart because we will have a hard restart at 2 p.m. today. Okay. Those in groups, work your magic. Maybe if I could have everybody's attention, just for our group, we just had a question that we wanted to do a little research on. I want you to know we've got a group of folks to my right in the room that are here to help us, particularly Michelle Cartwright and Bryce Wilson, who can help us immediately with anything from the financial picture. So if you have questions, please know that they're here for your use. Thanks. Just to keep your groups on task. Got 20 minutes until we reconvene. This is the 5-minute warning for the reconvening. This is a 1-minute warning for the reconvening. 1 minute. Okay, I think we're ready to go. First of all, for anybody listening and for everyone in the audience, thanks for your patience. For every member of the commission, thanks for your work on this. It seemed like we got a lot of good things done. I know this group did. So we'll start with Chancellor Terman talking about the information that our group discussed, and any debate, any questions that you have on what is raised, please let us know. In the end, we're looking for consensus to make additions or deletions to the report, and we'll do that. I'll be the judge, but I'll promise you I'll be as fair as I can be about consensus as we go here. So that's Chancellor Terman, you start.
We didn't have any particular comments as it relates to the introduction and the background. I think that is somewhat self-explanatory. As we did go through the brief historical context, we spent a little bit of time reviewing that first bullet, which highlights the 20%. We brought Bryce over and spent a little bit of time noting that it started at 20%. It quickly went to 2.23. We tracked down that it was LB 806 in 1997, which went into effect in 1988-99 calculations. We thought it maybe is warranted to put that historical context in there, so that as we're asking those questions, others may do that as well. He also affirmed that the LER rate that went from 105 to 1 has been now consistent since 2017. And so it would make sense to incorporate that in as well. So did I capture that correctly from our team?
Yes, and I'm going to look at Bryce. Bryce, are those accurate numbers? So for the purposes of the commission, we would say what was stated as the LER, or we will confirm that amount and look at that. And I would just look around at the groups and say, is there consensus to make that addition to the report? Comment.
We didn't spend much time on this, but the reason I did have concerns about this, because we do spend at least.
Could you use your microphone, please? Sorry.
I think we will find out that we do the legislature appropriates over 20% of the income taxes to schools. They just don't do it to districts. And I think people are confused about that. That somehow, because if TIOSA is now what, 1.7? I mean, our income tax revenues are like 500 million. So it's over 20%. So I agree with you that somehow that needs to be clear. Because a lot of people come in hearings when I was in the legislature and say, well, we're not hitting the 20%. We're hitting the 20%, we're just not hitting 20% per district. It's not going to the district.
I would ask the groups if there's consensus for the addition as presented and as discussed by former Senator Linehan.
So if I could address this a little bit differently. First, I wanted to add to your ad, which is if we could set the percentage, because I think it's slightly higher than the 1997. I vaguely remember it going up ever so slightly more from the 2.23. So we could also list just is currently set at, and just give whatever that accurate number is. I wonder if your point is more of an observation for another section versus capturing the history of the commission, because I think the history of the commission was that 20% expectation. But I agree with you that people then assume, since we're not hitting the 20%, we're not distributing enough income taxes, where the income taxes are getting distributed, just not through this mechanism. I do agree with that.
I don't care where we put it. I just think it's important to put it in the report because not for the legislature. I think the legislature understands, but if this is read widely, which we hope it is, then other people need, districts that aren't, they think they're not getting their 20%. And some of them aren't, but some of them are getting more, so.
I was just going to say, I think both things are right, but for different reasons. The number one there is capturing allocated income tax, which is a different way to return the 20%. And I think the point that Luann's making is also a factual one, which knowing that that's a major receipt to the state and school funding is a major expense to the state, that there's probably that percent coming in another way. So I think both things they're two different things, but point taken in both instances. Can I make a suggestion to that?
Please do.
Before the August 12th meeting, Senator Hughes had sent us as commission members a document that was titled Brief History of Nebraska School Finance Legislation that was done by the Legislative Research Office, Senator Hughes, correct? Mm-hmm. And I happened to reread through that this past weekend in preparation for today. I almost found myself wondering if making reference to this and maybe even linking to it in the brief history section, it was just really great information that captured the changes. So on page 4, where you see since 2002, there have been multiple changes to the formula, including the adjustments related to yada, yada, yada. I'm wondering if it could just be a reference to, as outlined in the Legislative Research Office, as highlighted in the Legislative Research Office document. I think that being in the appendices and potentially being linked really captures some of what Luann had just made reference to, along with some of the other changes that Dr. Terman had referenced.
Is there consensus to add that document? I'm seeing a lot of yes.
I agree wholeheartedly, but I would have the fiscal office look at it before we post it. Just to make sure that the research office and the fiscal office are on the same page. Which I'm sure they'd be willing to do.
Yeah, we can do it. Bryce, I'm going to put that on your to-do list. Okay, I think I saw consensus. Does anybody want to show me that there's not consensus? And here's what I think there is consensus for. There's the addition, as Chancellor Terman talked about originally. There was also the conversation that was shared by Liz Standish and Luann Linehan. And then there was the addition of in the appendix of the document that Senator Hughes sent out that Dr. Schwartz referenced. To follow all that. That's what I'm saying I believe there is consensus for. Okay, we will adopt that. And Chancellor Terman, can you go a little quicker, please? That was supposed to be funny.
I think the second one, just making reference, we've got two different headings, commission meeting, agenda and summary, commission meeting and agenda and summary. So eliminate that at the bottom of page 4. When we jumped into the preliminary findings, I think our initial conversation around finding 1, clearly I think we feel it's probably warranted to reference the bill numbers that are related to that. LB 583 for the foundation aid and 80% for special education, and then the special session reference LB 34. I think there will be times when people want to go back and look at the historical context, what led to some of these changes, if we're not able to successfully document them. When we got into the actual chart for this particular finding, I think we were questioning whether or not it's accurately showing what some of the narrative is incorporating. It doesn't necessarily match the words directly, and we felt that it'd be warranted to include the chart that shows the state, local, federal, county, non-revenue data that's been provided. I think that was page 3 of attachment A in the statewide school revenue historical document that Bryce shared at the second meeting, I believe. And so we would make that recommendation for the group to consider.
That's good. And if you, I know Grant has it and is looking at it. Grant, can you at least hold it up for commission members to see? Maybe it'll jog memories of what it is we're talking about there.
We had the same shots.
Grant also commented that somewhere in the narrative, we just make reference, if we're putting the bill numbers, also reference the dollar amount that was contributed by the state, the 750 million. Probably makes sense to incorporate that into that narrative as well. So those were what we had for finding one.
Comments on that addition?
Chancellor Terman, we had almost an identical conversation. Two things that we had thought we might want to add is that the LB 1107 was the original property tax credit from 2020, and that was what created the basis for the future decision to do LB 34. That was a point that Senator Linehan had made. And then the other item that we had noted was LB 243, which was passed in conjunction with LB 583. We thought that would be another one to add, but otherwise your conversation sounds like it mirrored very closely with ours.
We had
Go
very similar conversation. We talked about that the shift could be attributed to the front loading of the state income tax credit for schools, and the state income tax credit for schools was established in 2020 with LB 1107, so just making that point. We also identified that if we were to create a glossary of terms that would go along with this report, you know, you'd want to have like state sources, local sources, federal sources, cost growth factor possibly, if we wanted to do a glossary of terms. We also said that with adoption of whatever phase we get to in the report today, we could adopt it with the authority for the executive committee to approve a final draft as long as it was just definitional in nature. So that if we didn't get everything clearly across the tracks the way we wanted, we could have a conditional adoption for the executive committee for final approval with definitional type of things. Nothing that would speak for the full body or sway anything around in a major way. That was a few of the suggestions from our group.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm going to add one. My phone's blowing up over here. Okay, so this brief history of Nebraska school finance legislation. Yes, we asked the research office to help pull it together. And then my staff, we have added some things in ourselves. So this is not an official research office document. So we can't say as such. We're more than, I mean, it's fine for our office to have it included, but we need to state as much where it came from. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Phil Scholes can still look at it 100%. Yeah, I'm fine with that, but I think legislative research is like having heart attacks over there in the audience. So we're gonna put that to bed. It's on us. Okay, thanks.
In the end, we'll put in something that is approved from the research office. Okay. Key finding 2.
I think the vast majority of our conversation focused around probably the graphic display, whether or not that's showing the key element of what we hoped that it would. I think our primary conversation was how to highlight the 24-25, the sheer fact that 81 to 100% that we have no schools, and how do you offset that when you compare that to the 2021 data? And I'm not sure if there's a way to visually kind of pull that out within those graphs, but for the most part, I think that's the only comment that we had for finding 2.
Other groups on key finding 2.
The only thing that came from this group, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, is people really liked key finding 2, thought the chart was effective. If there were maybe a link that went directly to the appendices where the individual districts were referenced, I think there was some thinking that might be helpful for senators to be able to directly go to where that information was at.
And we talked about highlighting that state percent column. We talked about highlighting just like in yellow or something, the state percent. So if you're looking up for your certain school or district, you can see real clear where it's at.
Liz?
Yep, so my table is holding me accountable. Key finding number 1, there was one last thing on the last sentence I want to make sure we capture. Nebraska property taxpayers paid, and we think the 600 million, if the department feels more comfortable with that broader number, otherwise we think the number's about 685. And we actually wanted to add the chart that had that there as well. And add that line to the chart, and then we also identified the same pie chart that your team identified. And the end of that sentence, after property taxes, just to be clear what we mean when we say property taxes, it would be property taxes levied for property tax year 2024. So that, I'm sorry, is our final comments on key finding number 1. Key finding number 2, we did replace the last sentence. We kind of rewrote the last sentence, and this is rough. But we thought we would make it more active as to what happened. So like school districts across the state must levy for the full amount, including the school property tax credit. The revenue received to schools reflects the higher portion paid from state sources or something of that sort, as opposed to the method not impacting the levies, because I think that is the reason why the method doesn't impact the levies. So we were trying to explain why the credit doesn't impact the levies, because school districts have to actually ask for that amount, even though we're getting it from the state instead of from the taxpayer.
Questions for clarification from any group?
I think that's a fair point to add that last portion that Liz mentioned.
I believe there's consensus for that change. Dr. Four would love to see that finished sentence
It's
when,
beautifully scripted here. I'll be happy to share.
when you're done. Okay. Liz, you want to, does anybody else have any comments on key finding number 2? If not, Liz, do you want to kick us off on key finding 3?
We did not have any changes to key finding number 3.
I think the only one that we had was looking at the charts, whether or not providing additional data for kind of 5-year and 10-year, simply because it's hard to tell when the major transition occurred to having no districts at the at the $1.05. We visited with Bryce. He indicated they have the data. It may make sense to see if we can incorporate that in there so you can see the progression of that to where we're at right now. That was the only comment that we had.
And the chart looks like, rather than the 2 data points that you see on the key finding number 3 chart, it's 6 data points, and they're in 5-year increments, rather than 2 data points 25 years apart. I think I see consensus for that. Anybody have any final comments on key finding number 3? Key finding number 4, Dr. Schwartz, I'm going to ask you if you want to kick this one off.
We didn't necessarily have any specific suggestions that I have noted on my document. We did continue to have conversations about the fact that we know ESSER did have an impact on that. And we know there was a request for some additional information, but I don't know that we had any concerns with how it was worded in here whatsoever.
Chancellor Terman?
I think the only thing that we had, I mean, we certainly had a lot of discussion over the last couple of meetings about CPI and doing the other kind of inflationary calculations that impact schools. Probably not the appropriate place to put it because it would take maybe more time than we have, but I think referencing it possibly in a next step that in the future, we, as a commission, we've talked about making sure that people understand the context of that. So it's not just seeing increases, it's increases in relation to where the economy has gone locally.
We also had conversation about that at our table, and not necessarily defining it exactly now, because we wouldn't have the time for that, but referencing that it will be part of the picture in the future.
Do you see that as an addition to key finding 4, or do you see that as something that we delineate in the next steps?
I think either one, as long as it's captured.
Next step's probably sufficient.
That's what we thought is, we don't want to lose it, but probably not here, but definitely in the next steps.
Okay.
So hang on to that. Any final questions or comments on key finding number 4?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we wanted to spell out ESSER, the abbreviation. I was preparing for the next one. Good job, guys.
One time
Yep,
parenthetically.
yep, just spell it out.
Yep. Another inclusion in the glossary.
In the text as well.
Yeah, I would do it
Yeah.
the first time it's listed in the text.
Gotcha. Okay. Key finding number 5, Chancellor Terman.
I think our main discussion was the lack of the visual for this one, and so we asked Bryce to come over and provide us a little bit of information. If you recall, this was the multiple charts that showed various states. Our question was whether or not putting at least a table that showed the differentials for each of the states, assuming we didn't have to provide too much additional background on the differentiations that we see across states right now as well, knowing that not everyone approaches it the same way. I think the other concern is the most recent data was from 2021. So you're not gonna, you get to that set of tables or those graphs and it's gonna, we're not gonna look the way we do now because we're gonna be a couple years from that orientation. So that was our discussion with Bryce.
Liz, questions or comments from your group?
For key finding number 5, we looked at some of the similar information, but the whole sentence about assuming nothing else changed in other states, we actually struck the end of that sentence because felt it was maybe a little overly speculative. And then, though, I mean, I do believe there will be big movement made, but we switched it to is likely to improve Nebraska's ranking among peer states, just knowing that that could come out at a later date once we have the data set.
Consensus? Is there consensus for that change? I'm seeing yes unless somebody tells me no. Yes. Anything else, Liz, from your group?
No.
Dr. Schwartz? Okay. Then I would say we are to the summary of key findings. Liz, do you want to kick that off?
Sure, we added a couple of sentences. So after the 600 million comparing 23 to 24 to 24, 25, we wrote a sentence about the effective tax impact of the school property tax credit occurred from 2020 to present through the refundable tax credit, and the front-loaded tax credit took effect for the 2024 year.
Consensus on that addition? Seeing nods. That's an addition we will make. Anything else, Liz?
That's it.
Dr. Schwartz, anything from your group?
We just had one item. It was a observation by Senator Lenahan that we thought was factually correct and warranted, that having recommended earlier that LB 1107 from the 2020 session be included, that kind of feeds into 2 governors. So in that first sentence, policy changes made by Governor Pillen and Governor Ricketts would be reflective that that took place over 2 separate governors' tenures.
Consensus for that agenda? We will add that. Chancellor Terman.
I think The only thing we debated was whether or not this key finding fit here or it was in next steps, but we talked a little bit about where is the best place to talk about the erosion. We've talked quite a bit about it. We think we clearly recognizing getting to that percentage value that we're at now is critical, which means that going forward, we need some sort of strategy by which that doesn't go back. We also talked about the ongoing management of the plan, that this commission should not erode away or dissolve, because we'll find ourselves right back here again having these same conversations. That ongoing, a key finding is that the importance of a commission to keep the plan in front of itself and moving forward.
Questions or comments? Consensus? Okay. Next steps. Chancellor, I don't remember where I'm at, so.
Yep, I'll go.
Kick this off.
I think the only thing we had related to my previous comment is, should the first bullet be about safeguarding the erosion? That, and then we begin the process of setting what should the target be and how do we get to that over time.
Okay, seeing support for that. All right. Liz?
Other than if we find a way to include the analysis of cost growth comparables, whether it be through CPI or other metrics, that would be the only next step, which I think we previously talked about.
Yeah, we want to make sure that's called out in there. So do you have a recommendation for how we do that?
Not right
Did you-
now, but I could probably come up with one pretty quickly.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Schwartz, anything additional from your group?
No, we had talked about how we felt like the bullet points matched pretty closely with the original language of the statute, that there, while presented differently, there were some parallels, and certainly, I don't know that anyone here would have any concern adding the elements that the other table made reference to.
Okay. Any comments, I'll just ask for, from any of the groups, any comments on the conclusion? Any changes, additions, or deletions? Tom?
Yeah, thank you. Relative to the next steps, I think we have to decide whether the summation we have in there currently is sufficient going forward, or do we want to tease some of the next steps? You know, we've got some hard conversations in front of us about a lot of different things. A lot of it's going to hinge on school spending, the trajectory of school spending, where we're at, outcomes, what we want education to look like in Nebraska. Going to be some very hard and difficult conversations. Do we want to tease those conversations in our next steps here, or save it for strictly phase 2 conversations? Would be the question for me.
Would you put that in the conclusions, are you saying?
I had in mind in the next steps.
In the next
Back to
steps.
the next steps,
next
yes.
steps.
Do we want to tease some of those conversations going forward, or are we sufficiently covered here for the time being?
My thought would be call it out specifically. I'm not speaking for our table, but that would be my personal thought.
One conversation we had is finding consensus on a specific topic list might be challenging, so that would probably be another body of work we'd have to
Yeah.
do.
Go ahead.
It'll come as no surprise that I agree with Tom Breezy. I think if you don't put down that it's going to be hard and what we have to discuss, we won't be taken seriously by the legislature. It just, because if we don't say we're going to look at these things and we're going to have tough discussions, then what are we doing?
So I would ask, do you have any proposed language?
I don't have proposed language, I've got a list. But, yeah, that's as far as I could go right now. But we could develop the language, I assume, in short order if need be. But
Brett?
Well, I'm the state aid formula that TIOSA form has been built over the last 35 or 40 years. Would there be value for this group to go back and kind of break that apart? I mean, we looked at the flow chart in the very first information you sent out, Dr. Maher. Are all of those elements, as we go through that flow chart, still apropos to what we need for modern school funding, or are some of those obsolete? Do we, if we're gonna get serious about the work, just because we said something was true in 1991, is it still true today as far as funding schools? I mean, I don't know that there's ever been a deep dive into, what is there, about 20 different elements that go into the school aid formula? Are they all locked in concrete forever? Or would some changes there lend to some efficiencies in schools?
Our mic's broken. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. It's me. I think that falls directly in like that second bullet point where it says evaluating the needs aspect of the current and proposed changes to the school. I agree with you. I think every single one, not that we have time every year, but pick apart some of these things and really dive into it. But I think that's reflected in what's, that specific, what you're saying is reflected here. I'd like to hear what Senator, former Senator Breezy's list is. Tom, Mr. Breezy, however you wanna, Tom is good, okay. I would love to hear your list, but I feel like what Fred is saying is, included pretty directly in here. But
Are you asking me? Oh, okay. Well, we have school spending here, if we include federal dollar outlays, been chugging along at roughly twice the rate of inflation the last 20 years. Now, that's not sustainable at that rate. So we have to look for ways, we have to look at a lot of different things. Overall, we have to look for ways to lower costs in public education. Are there efficiencies that we can come up with, that the legislature can come up with to reduce costs, to make it more sustainable? And if we're going to prevent an increase in property taxes going forward, again, we have to look for ways to run state education more, public education more affordably. The legislature is going to have to look at new sources of revenue, going to have to look at spending caps, the efficacy of the 243 revenue cap, see what that looks like. And under those conversations, we're going to be looking at spending, we're going to be looking at spending increases, we're going to be looking at student costs relative to other states. And also we need to look at the adequacy of school spending in Nebraska relative to outcomes. And again, the efficacy of that revenue cap is going to be one of the keys. If I was making a recommendation to the legislature right now, I would tell them, look for ways to run schools more efficiently at a cheaper cost, look for excess revenue sources, other revenue sources, and look at the LB 243 revenue cap and see if that's what you want. You might not need all three of those, but you're going to need a combination of those to make this work. And we're not constrained by the statutory language here. It lays out what we shall do, but we can do a lot more than that. We're told to provide recommendations relative to school funding in the state. So we have a pretty wide mandate there. And so we're not, again, not constrained by the list of 6 items there. We can go where we choose to go. But again, those are the conversations I'd be looking at. Comparing many of these things to other states, school spending to other states, what's driving school spending, if we determine it's a problem in Nebraska, what's driving it, administrative costs, per pupil ratios, but again, in state government, a few years ago, we introduced a bill to provide an efficiency review of state government. We adopted that bill, and there's been an ongoing review of state government looking for efficiencies, looking for ways to do things better. Is there something similar that we should do relative to public education in Nebraska? What can we find to lower the cost and make our public education funding model more sustainable? But again, these are going to be hard conversations, but we can develop a list. I think we could come up with language in our working groups here if we wanted to quickly put something like that together. Would the public be better served? Would they appreciate a more detailed list like that? I think they would. I think, Dr. Marr, you suggested you probably like a list as well, I think, a little bit ago.
I do, and if you'll allow me to jump in, my thought is this. Some of what you said, I just found myself nodding, and some of what you said, I kind of bristled. You know, maybe put the old superintendent's hat on for a second. But I also think, why wouldn't we talk about some of those things? Why wouldn't we have those tough conversations? I think we should. So I will let this conversation go, but I want you to know what I think the next step is. I think the next step is the executive committee with Dr. Four, we go to another room and try to figure out what is it that we said that we would change in our key findings and summary and so forth. And I'd love to get some thoughts, some consensus from the group on potentially formulating a little bit of a narrative and then a list of things to talk about. But that's just me thinking out loud and thinking quickly. I hadn't thought about that item prior to this meeting. So any conversation on that thought process? Liz?
I think it will be really important to keep the list neutral without opinions already formed. Because
Yeah.
I look at the spending average that we're detailing in our report and living in schools and experiencing high student needs and high student growth. I would bristle is the word that you use. So I do think that if we're going to cast out future work, we'd want to be very strictly adhering to not formulating opinions as we cast it out.
Fair point. Luann?
Here's what some in the legislature will read when they read the report we have drafted. They appropriated $324 million in whatever year, 2022. They appropriated $750 million in 2020. And we have $600 million in property tax relief. So they appropriated over $1 billion, which equals $600 million in property relief. That's not, that will not go down well in the legislature. And if we don't say something about the future and what we're going to do about it, why are we here? %3.5% growth on $5 billion is $175 million a year. $175 million a year is way beyond 20% of what, well, maybe not way beyond. The state revenues are about $5 billion a year. Schools are at $5 billion a year. And that's why Tom Breezy is saying it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. And he and I are not running for anything, but he said the word that you never say as a politician, we need to look at new revenues. I mean, I think we do need to look at new revenues. And we're not constrained by what the bill says. It just says this is what you must do. It doesn't say we can't do other things.
I think we're getting a glimpse at phase 2 right now. Other comments from the group? Then go ahead, Senator Hughes.
Oh, okay. To what Senator Breezy is saying, I use the word efficiencies a lot. I think we have to look at efficiencies across the board for everything. So I think you could add that as a bullet, and it's very generic. It's not judgmental. It's what we all should be. Every time you use taxpayer money, we should be using it in the most efficient way that we can. And so I think adding an efficiency line on that list is very beneficial, and it can be on anything, right? I also, and I am running, would be very interested in looking at other revenue sources. There's other sources, we've got Bureau of Educational Lands Fund, we've got to maximize the tar out of that. I mean, and if there's more out there, I'm willing to do it, because we want to take a little bit less burden off other taxes. So I think both of those make sense. I think in terms of needs and resources, that covers a lot also of what some of the things you're saying, and those are already on that bullet going forward. But yeah, I mean, efficiencies, yeah, that covers a lot. It can be administrative costs, it can be how we run our schools, it can be the size of our schools, it can be, there's a lot of things there, so that's what I prefer.
If we are gonna add a bullet to that effect, I just wanna make sure it's something that we can achieve in the next 11 months, knowing that our next report is gonna go out on November 1. So if we are gonna analyze the needs side, the resource side, you know, we've got 5, I think we're gonna add 1 or 2, 6 or 7 bullets at this point. If we're gonna add an 8th, that's fine. I'm not afraid of the work here. Just wanna make sure that we keep the scope at something that we can actually achieve in phase 2. Because I also believe that we'll diminish our value as a commission if we make a laundry list and we're not able to actually achieve and do what we say we're gonna do. So however that shakes out, I just think we need to be cognizant of the fact we have 11 months, because I believe it's November 1 for the next report. So whatever these bullets are, I just wanna make sure there's something that we can follow through on.
So is it almost like phase 2 can include, it's not all, from this list, it can be part, pieces of that? Because you're right, we can't do all those things in 1 year, next year. We're gonna have to be specific, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And my thought, to your point, Aaron, not going to make promises on what we're going to resolve or solve, but make promises of what we're going to look at, what we're going to look into. We're going to examine these issues. Again, might not solve the matter based on that examination, but I also don't mind raising expectations a little bit. But I've always felt that way about, well, anyway. But put the pressure on ourselves, raise expectations, put the pressure on ourselves, and see what we come up with.
I'm wondering if the bullet point could be pretty simple, Doc. I'm wondering if it could be something like continue the examination of other school finance-related data such as school spending and comparability with other states, period. It's non-judgmental. It captures everything that Tom had shared fits in those 2 categories. It's a such as, so it's not limiting, and just seems to be pretty straightforward. Just a thought.
Other comments? Okay. Tom.
Appreciate your comment, Dr. Schwartz, but not quite the specifics I had in mind, but it'd be middle ground somewhere. But I think a little more specificity personally.
Here's what I'm going to do at this time to keep us moving. I'm going to have the executive committee follow myself and Dr. Four. We're going to go sequester ourselves, make the changes that we know we heard from a consensus standpoint, and also see if we can come to some resolution to bring back to this group on what that final point that we've had discussion on could be, to see then if we have consensus back here. I would say for the listeners and for those in the audience, it will be 3:30 when we will reconvene. Approximately 45 minutes from now, 3:30 Central Time, we will reconvene. For those of you who have waited around for the 3:30 reconvening, or those of you who may be listening online, we will be back at 3:45. We're not quite done yet. 3:45 p.m. At minimum, I'll be back with an update. Hopefully, we'll all be in. I believe the rest of the committee will join me in just a couple of minutes. All right. thank you for hanging in there with us, and thanks to the executive committee for giving up your time and supplying some wisdom to the process here. Dr. Four, can you run through what the changes were? I guess I never asked you if that's how we would handle this when we get back in here. I see you nodding yes. For those who are listening in, we'll be with you on the changes in just a minute. Seriously, it'll be just a minute. Do you want to drive from any particular spot? Do you, okay, yep. We are plugging into the technology that's going to allow us to project here in the boardroom. Be just a second. Okay, Dr. Four, you want to, when you're ready.
So headings and page numbers have been added to this, and then any substantive edits are highlighted. There are some cases where maybe a term was capitalized and shouldn't be. Those changes have been made and won't be highlighted for you here, as they were considered non-substantive by the committee. This chart, however, was changed slightly to better reflect the language in the statute of people's roles and is representative of what is on the website, on the agency website. So it looks different. I'm drawing your attention there. Under brief historical context, which is on page 3, you'll see this note added. On the next page, page 4, you'll see this sentence added. The link is obviously missing and would be included before it was submitted. Just a note for folks following along, there were 2 sections called commission meetings and agendas. Dr. Turman had suggested out of their group removing that duplicative heading, and so that has been eliminated. But it did not affect the flow of the text. Page 5, under key finding 1, you'll see here the references to the bills, the relevant bills that were mentioned in the discussion. So this is at the bottom of page 5. Another bill reference at the end of that paragraph to 243. Continuing in the next paragraph, then two more bill references, 34 and 1107. And then additional text at the end of that paragraph.
Ryan, I don't know if it's important to note, but LB 34 is a special session, so I don't know if that should say special legislative session. Just because if you're looking it up on the website, it's in a different, it's under a different thing.
So you can say the following legislative session and special session in 2024.
Commissioner, with permission, we put that there now, and if there was a better way to reflect that before it was submitted at the authorization of the executive committee. There's a note then on the chart and graph reference here to be really clear about what would be included based on the discussion. So it would include the initial proposed chart that you all have and the chart that was proposed from the second meeting, page 3 of attachment A. And that came out of the group discussion earlier. So we're on page 6. You'll see a pretty significant change here in terms of strike through in a bit of a different sentence at the end of that paragraph. However, would you use your microphone,
Sarah,
please?
would you turn your mic on, please?
Yes, I would propose that we insert a sentence here that provides the effective tax levies after the credits. I've done that calculation, and it is significant. The maximum levy is now, the highest effective tax levy in the state is now 72 cents, as compared to the act for tax year 2024, as compared to the allowable levy of $1.05. Now, when I say effective levy, I mean after all credits. So I think that gives some context there to what we're saying that is more tangible.
Sarah, clarification, are you asking to add a sentence on to this?
Yes,
And do you have the language?
yes, yes. In 2024, comma, the effective, how about the maximum effective? The highest, yeah, the highest effective school tax levy after all state tax credits was $0.72.
Questions from the commission on that addition? Luann?
It's not a question, I think it's an excellent add, but we never talked, this whole report doesn't touch on FERC taxes. But now we're including it.
That's
in
true.
this. So I just, and I think it should be included, but we don't mention it in the report. And that increased a lot in the last few years too.
It has.
Tom Breezy, it was what, when we got there, it was 100 and
12 million.
Yeah, it went up to 200 million probably shortly after we got there, but it's over 4 now, correct? And I thought about that on the LB 243 comment up there, because it also increased that credit, not by it did by a significant amount over time.
Were we gonna put in this section how much the appropriations for those bills were?
Yeah, we didn't have time to pull the numbers, but the group was okay with adding that later.
Well, yeah, because I think if you don't say how much it was, it doesn't say, it doesn't tell the story.
We've got two topics dangling right now. One is the proposed language from Sarah. Do we want to include that or not?
Maybe you, I think you should include it, but maybe you just put a parentheses there and say this includes all tax credits, or includes the original tax credit and the school tax credit.
Sarah?
Sarah, would it be possible to take what you've calculated and make it one of our appendices to the overall document that just show, 'cause I mean, that's, including it makes a lot of sense to me, because it's a dramatic, the effective versus the stated tax rate is a key thing to highlight. But to include the more detailed data by district might be something people would want to see as a result of that. So to include that in the appendices would add to it, I think.
Yes, we can certainly do that. I would propose a sentence that says, the state tax credits include the real property tax credit, property tax credit, and homestead tax credit allocated to schools, as well as the school property tax credit, or more, school district property tax relief credit. And then maybe see appendices, and I can provide that.
Okay, for this portion of the conversation, is there consensus that that is a good addition to the document? We'll add that to the document. The second topic that came up was putting in the total. My question to the group might be, do we put a space in here, a sentence that talks about what the total is, and then we actually go figure out what that total is and insert it, unless somebody knows what it is off the top of their head?
I think we're gonna have to allow some leniency to the executive committee to finalize the draft when it comes to these type of things. If we're all in agreement to put the number in there, we don't know it at this moment, just to have a placeholder and then trust that the executive committee will put the correct numbers in there.
So wouldn't it just be that number on the fiscal note, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fiscal note, okay.
Okay. Do you have language that you would recommend for us?
I would, when I looked at this, I just put it after each bill. The legislature appropriated X number of dollars for this. LB, what's the first one? LB 384? 583 was around $320 million.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put around, I'd find the exact number. And the 34 was 750. Which included the 1107, that was the big one.
All right, Dr. Farr.
Does that reflect the will of the commission, Chair?
I think so. My answer is yes.
I think Mr. Breezy has a question.
I just wondered if we could go back to key finding number 1. Did we make clear in there that the amount of state dollars going to schools includes the credits? I thought we did, but I don't think it happened, did it? But when we talk about the amount, 53% being funded by the state, are we clear that that includes 60% of the original property tax credit, homestead exemption, the front-loaded 1107 credit? I'm not sure that it is. I thought it would be important that readers know that. When we talk about the state providing 53%, that's not just TIOSA state aid.
We could add an all-encompassing sentence that said this increase can be attributed to, and we'd want to list all the bills. So we'd want to talk about the credits, the homestead exemption, but then also the 583, which included the investment in special ed and foundation aid. So we could do a sentence after the word revenue, before the word final. So I'm in the first paragraph of key finding number 1. And so before the last sentence, we could do a second to last sentence and say the 53% increase can be attributed to, and then we could list everything that it would be attributed to, including the tax credit side and the formula change
I think
side.
that would be important.
Is it could be attributed to? Is that what you said?
We could say it probably stronger than that.
Yes.
Is attributed to, and then we could, and then put a blank and we could do the list. Yep, that'll be 583.
It's more than that, because you've got, and I don't know if we need to go there, but I'm just, maybe you need to chart, guys, because you've got the increases in the first property tax credit. There wasn't really a bill on the homestead exemption, that just goes up every year. It's an automatic thing. What other one did we mention?
Well, the property tax credit fund, or
That goes up every year too.
Yes.
But that's, what was, do you remember your bill number on that? Or was it the same bill?
243,
And I may be
But-
mistaken here, isn't it just the 583 and the 34 the things that changed that impacted the percent of state funding? I don't disagree conceptually with what Senator Lenahan is sharing, but in terms of the change that occurred, the change that occurred was a function of just those two bills that moved the percent,
For the most recent.
the most recent shift that's being noted.
If we want to, is this another area where we could just put what all revenues from the state side into the appendices as well? Just that way we could list all of them in there, everything that would go into it, and it's in the appendices.
could do that as well.
Yeah.
But I think a sentence right up there, state sources include blah, 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 blah. Don't need bill numbers, don't need anything else, but just so the reader understands that when we're saying 53% is coming from the state, oh, they're talking about my tax credit too, right? Okay, not just state aid education. And there in the highlighted part, the 53% increase, well, that's not a 53% increase we're talking about, is it?
No, it's the difference from the
Yeah,
30,
53% total at this point.
yep, compared to 38 in the past.
And the state sources being calculated here include everything.
So I'm looking at the state sources. I believe we have state aid, special education programs, school aid, special education, school age, transportation, homestead exemption, property tax credit, nameplate, cap tax, wind energy, railroad. I mean, we got like 20 of them.
That's quite a list.
Yeah,
Maybe my idea.
I'll stop. There's more.
Need to make sure the reader understands that we talk about a lot of different sources there.
We can put that comprehensive list in. I would just recommend to the commission that you give us some authority to do that after we leave today.
Or is the goal to capture the 1107? Is that your concern with only listing 34 and 583? Because we could say 34 previously established in 1107.
Well, I think you have to, because
Because you could do just those three and capture the change, as opposed to getting into the laundry list.
Well, I think you could do both, actually. I think you could add the 1107 and then do the laundry list.
Because I think we could capture the 583 and the LB 34, and then we could reference previously established under 1107, so that people knew where the 34 came from. And then have the laundry list as another source.
I would trust you and the executive committee to figure that out.
Okay.
I think state sources, something along Liz's line, state sources include, among other, in addition to the state aid, or TIOSA, however you want to phrase it, also include the 1107 credit and 60% of the property tax credit fund, among various other items, and then the glossary list it all.
Dr. Four, I think we have consensus to move forward. I think that needs some massaging yet from the executive committee.
Just to be clear, Commissioner, I'm deleting down here what I'd started to type for that. That was not there before I started to type it here until I got the direction where to put it accurately.
Correct.
There were no edits to key finding 3 other than the directions here on changes to the inserting the chart and graph, adding 5 and 10-year data points in the chart, having 6 data points rather than 2. And then the committee recommended striking key finding 4.
Is there consensus to having 3 remain intact largely, minus the graph, and 4 being struck? I think we have officially worn the group out. There is consensus.
Key finding 5 would then change to key finding 4. And so you'll see here then a change to language at the top of this next page. And then a note on an addition, or rather, on the chart or graph, the commission was not presented with a proposed chart or graph today in its handouts. And so then based on the commission's discussion earlier, the committee is proposing to include a table that's made up of data that was previously presented to the commission from its September meeting, and you can see the reference.
Tom?
And just for clarification on key finding 4, we deleted that because there was some disagreement on what numbers to be used, and we will certainly look into school spending and school spending increases. That'll be reflected in the next steps section.
Good clarification. Any other comments on key finding 4 or key finding 5? I'm assuming that we have consensus on the changes made. Dr. Four, move forward.
Under summary of key findings, you'll note the reference to acknowledge the work of both governors in that effort, and then the inclusion of the highlighted sentence, the effective tax impact.
Comments on the summary of key findings? We have consensus. What's next?
I don't know if the page numbers will quite match up, but in the new document, it'll be page 9, and so this is under next steps for the commission. I'm sorry, this is not highlighted, but this first, I'm going to highlight this first next step, as this is an addition based on the commission's discussion. Then following an additional next step, reviewing spending. There's no other proposed edits.
Yeah. No, I think the glossary is something that we will add. In fact, give us another 45 minutes. I'm joking.
We have these things today called computers, email.
Yeah. We will put together a glossary.
Commissioner? I
Yes.
have a question. There are some, just some grammatical things that need to be corrected throughout the document. Will you all be doing that, or can?
We will. We're going to need, I think, some sort of motion that gives the exec committee some sort of latitude to clean it up grammatically, to add the glossary, to make those changes that we think are consistent with what we've heard in this group, but certainly those changes would be part of that.
Commissioner, when the time is right, I would have that language for you, that motion.
I would ask the commission if there are any other questions or comments on changes to be made in the document. And I think, Tom, I'll specifically ask you, we're having a conversation before we took a break about adding items. Do you want any, would you give us some feedback on, were your wishes met? Does the report reflect what you were hoping to have happen? Loaded question.
That last bullet point that we added there, where we added, and any other factors affecting school spending, I think that catches what we want to discuss going forward, unless folks want to lay some things out specifically. Back there, we spent quite a bit of time talking about that. I made a list, and I had a list of about 10 things, but every one of them dealt with school spending, and I thought, well, it's maybe a little repetitive to list all of those items in there. And so we listed just a couple key ones, I thought, 2 or 3 key ones, and then any other factors. Does that sufficiently catch where we want to go with this? And any thoughts from anyone else on that?
Doesn't prohibit us from doing anything, right?
That's right.
Correct.
We can do what we want. Yeah.
Correct. And I wanted, I didn't put you on the spot there. I wanted to just have that discussion here to let people know we did talk about it. We did actually put something into the document that we think addresses that, so we can have that conversation in Phase 2.
If I had my druthers, I would, reviewing spending, blah, 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 and any other factors impacting spending and any other data relative to spending might be good to have in there as well, but that's probably included in the language that we have. And as Luann points out, doesn't limit us to anything. We'll be looking and talking about a lot of things, I'm sure.
Thank you. Now I'll go back to, are there any other questions or comments on any part of the report? Seeing none, is there a motion to address agenda item number 5?
I would make that motion, Commissioner Maher.
Yes, Dr. Schwartz.
I move to adopt the proposed annual report to the Nebraska Legislature and direct the chair to submit to the clerk pursuant to state statute and authorize the executive committee to approve unsubstantive changes and an inclusion of a glossary to the report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Shavonna Holman with the second. Dr. Holman, thank you. Is there any discussion on the matter? Luann?
It's not really a discussion, just that, will we, all the committee members, not to change it or anything, but will we get a heads up copy before it goes to the legislature, so if the press calls, we know what we're talking about?
You absolutely will. So the process, should this motion pass, the process would be that the executive committee gets together, finishes the document under what we believe to be the wishes of the commission, and then the commission would get that prior to any other entity getting that. And we fully intend to comply with the December 1 requirement. So prior to December 1, members of the commission would get that copy. Okay, we've got a motion by Dr. Schwartz and a second by Dr. Holman. Any other conversation on this matter? Would the secretary please call the roll?
Luann Linehan.
Yes.
Shauna Koger.
Yes.
John Schwartz.
Yes.
Liz Standish.
Yes.
Keith Runge.
Yes.
Shavonna Holman.
Yes.
Jason Dolliver. Ann Foster.
Yes.
Fred Meyer.
Yes.
Tom Breezy.
Yes.
Grant Latimer.
Yes.
Paul Turman.
Yes.
Aaron Plaus.
Yes.
Sarah Scott.
Yes.
Brian Maher.
Yes.
14 yes.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to adopt the proposed annual report to the Nebraska Legislature and direct the chair to submit the clerk to the clerk pursuant to the state statute is adopted. I want to thank all of you for that. I know it took some time, but to have a unanimous vote on that, I think is terrific, and the executive committee will meet the wishes of the commission. We will now move to our public comment period. The public comment period is allotted 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes per speaker during the period. Do we have anybody who has requested to address the commission? We have not. I will not read the rest of that. So public comment is closed. Thank you to those who attended in person and who tuned into the broadcast. The November 18th, 2025 School Financing Review Commission meeting is adjourned.